Hello, friends. Welcome to the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg. I have a returning guest. I love returning guests. Karen
I love
Light, do
being a
you remember
returning
when you
guest.
were on the show? Has it been a year?
Like a year? Probably a good year.
Yeah. So, Karen, for anyone who, I don't usually do intros, I'm breaking my own rules because, it's my show,
Yay.
um, does doodling. So if you have markers, texters, pens, something handy, I did not. I was not organized for my own show. Does that surprise anyone? But now I am. So I have the markers and I have my unofficial Karen Doodle Diary because you've been on this show a couple times. I've been on your show. So, and we've done some events together. So there's all sorts of stuff in here. So this is your book. That's my book. So anyway, today, where did you want to start? Like the overall theme of this conversation, creating the connective experiences you crave. And before we even get into the pen, so if you're listening at home, don't panic. Don't panic. We'll talk first. I'm curious about your thoughts on this. As adults, I think it's can be challenging to have true connection, as you said, the connective experiences you crave, because there's circumstantial connection, like I see the other mums at school drop off and I wave and say hello. Or if you work in a 9 to 5 or employed, you see the people at the coffee maker or that you're sending emails to that you're connecting with in that way, but not the fulfilling kind of connection. Like, yeah, I see my kids and they're like, I'm going for a sleepover and I'm so excited. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a sleepover at 40, but you know what I mean? The energy of that, I think, is missing for many people. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, what really comes up for me is to kind of share a story about when I first started doing business for
Yes,
myself.
please do.
Um, so like most people, I worked for places, right? Like, so you work and you show up and there's your people and you like some, you talk to them a lot, you don't like others, you interact as little as possible. You learn to kind of just navigate what you've been given. And I was an independent contractor, so I was kind of in a lot of my work. Some of my work was in an office and some was just out in schools doing different things. So I did learn to kind of just show up and be like, hey, I'm here, and get used to like meeting people for the first time and a lot of different times. But as far as like my business goes, when I went off on my own, I kind of was like, wow, I'm really used to coworkers. Like I'm really used to, even in the independent contract work, there were other teaching artists doing what I did, and they would bring us together and have these trainings, and then we could talk to each other. And suddenly I was just kind of alone, and my artist part of myself absolutely loved it. Like, yes, put me in a quiet room, I can go for hours. But I'm more of an ambivert, and I do love to bounce ideas off of people, and I love hearing from other folks. So um everybody kept telling me, you have to do networking events, you have to do networking events, you have to do networking events. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do networking events. I'm not going to meet people there that I want to work with. I'm going to meet people there who are like business people, right? See, it still didn't get in my head that I was a business person. I was like, I want to meet business people, and I'm
I
not
love
going to
the
relate to
robot. For those of you not watching on YouTube, just listening, Karen's got this like robotic arms situation. Business people, yes, professional.
business professional. Yes. And but they were coaching me, and they're like, hey, because a lot of my illustration clients worked for themselves, and they're like, you got to go do this. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, and you have to do a pitch. And I'm like, a pitch? I don't want to do a pitch. I can't do a pitch. Like, and so it just, right. It started the story. First of all, I had a story that these people were not going to be my people. They were business people, and I was not, even though I was starting a business. And also that I couldn't be who I really was. I was going to have to like sell some version of myself or some made up thing about myself in order to fit in. I have to do this pitch thing.
I'm going to
Um,
pause you right there just for
yeah.
like to bring attention to those two things. The first one is in like, I'm going to have to be professional or I'm going to have to put on something that doesn't feel natural. It's kind of like, as gross as this sounds, you could put on someone else's underwear, but why would you want to? It's
I
like
don't want to.
we think, we tend to go into business for ourselves because we crave the freedom and flexibility. But then when we're given it, we're kind of putting ourselves back into a box artificially, which may not even serve us. So that
So true.
part. And the second part, you have to remind me, it's the fifth. I've lost it. What was the second point you just made?
That I was gonna have to be somebody I
Pitch.
wasn't. Yeah,
Pitch.
pitch.
Be somebody that you're
Mhm.
not, and you have to pitch because
Mhm.
I remember when I was new in business, as soon as I got to the pitch, my voice kind of fast. And I'd be like, I can't even listen to that. So it's kind of like, it'd be like having the most amazing conversation, connection, chat, or whatever. So, like, how can I work with you? So I'm just wanting to say, if anyone else is still in this situation, it's normal. It's like a phase. Like if you have children, or if you don't have children, you're aware children tend to roll, crawl, walk. So I think, the pitch is like one of the steps, and then you get to the point where you just do it without thinking. But if you're still in the high pitch or the part,
The high pitch.
yes, the high pitch, we got you. So as you were, back to stories. It's
Yes.
so good.
Yeah. Well, one of a red flag for me is always when I have this realization, right, that I feel like I have to be somebody else. And I've cultivated sort of an awareness when I'm in that space. And I did before I went to my first networking event, luckily enough. And I was like, okay. And so I started thinking a little bit more creatively, right? I was like, here's what I think everybody means by pitch and how everybody's going to show up. But how else could I show up? Like, what makes me feel good when I show up? And I'm like, well, I come from this big teaching background. I get so excited talking about art. Like, I love to talk about art. I love to show this artwork and have this conversation around it. And I'm like, well, why don't I show my artwork and have a conversation around it? And so all of a sudden my creativity was on. I was like drawing on my digital pad. I drew out some illustration stuff that represented me. And then I was like excited because it also brought some concepts. And I was like, oh, I could teach or talk if people want to talk more. And I printed them out and I got out my lovely laminator. Don't you love a laminator? And I laminated them. And I think, a little bit more excited than nervous by the time I showed up. And
Yes.
it was great too, because when you think about things, how you like to do it and who you are, you can't help but be more interesting, because that's what everybody else is trying to do when they're in those situations, is like try to fit in and do what's expected and do the norm. But when you show up like that, people are interested. They want to ask you questions. And I have to say, one of my best friends to this day is somebody I met at my first networking event. Like we connected, we kept growing our friendship, our relationship through business, and then our friendship, and now it goes like this, like we're just
Laura?
besties on all things. Well, Laura's another one that I met, but I met her only a year and a half ago or something. I met my friend Maddie. We're talking 6, 7, 8 years ago now. So
A long time ago. That's awesome. I've
yeah,
just got to ask, because this picture behind you with like the blue and the trees and the rainbow, is that new? Did you do that one?
I did do that one.
Is it
Yes,
new, or has it always been
this
there? I
is
just haven't noticed.
nope. This is a newer painting. I tend to switch these out as I finish things.
Is it like a wolf, like like the little, like the inner child
Coyote.
inside?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, can
yeah,
you take a photo of that
yeah.
later, please, and send it to me? I could look at that all day. That's
Yes, I
absolutely
absolutely
gorgeous.
can. Thank you.
Anyway, this is why I get
So
distracted.
no, it's great actually, because I do a lot of networking on Zoom.
And
So
you're proving your exact point, as in,
This
instead
matters.
of being someone else and trying to fit in and doing the same old that everyone does, like, here's my business card. Will you throw it in the bin, or will I? It's kind of like, hey, I do this stuff, and then here's examples of it, and then ask questions and end up on a natural segue where you're pitching without pitching, because, yeah, and
I'm
actually,
just telling people my story, really, right? Like I
yes.
paint, and when I paint, I like to put up new ones. And I could tell you about the coyote, why I painted the coyote, or why I picked those colors, or what the colors mean to me. Like we could talk about all kinds of things now. And that's why I have this whole like background behind me. I just upped my camera a little bit more. But first thing people say when I come on Zoom is like, what do you do? Why do you have children's books? Like, and I'm like, well, because I illustrate them.
Well, I'm also noticing the sun over
Yeah.
your other shoulder. I don't think I've seen that one before either. The sun with like glasses or something over the eyes.
Yeah.
But the colors, like the rainbow part over the side of the tree of the coyote, is just like a halo as I'm looking at you. So it's stunning.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I love to paint images of like creatures and animals that I come across that keep crossing my path or show up in my dreams, and really look for what they're trying to teach me. So when I do paintings with creatures in them, they take as long as they need to take, because sometimes those lessons are big. sometimes they're short and they go fast, but this one took a while.
Yeah, I love it. So
Pioneered a lot of change.
your 2 points, it's kind of like the craving the connection, so that feeling the call and heeding the call to attend networking events, but also realizing I don't want to do it like that, like as
Yeah.
in business suit, language,
Yeah.
professional. Because the thing is, I don't know about you, and this is not to speak down on anyone, but how many times have you attended a networking event and somebody has said all the right things, but at the end of the 5 minutes, however long you've had connecting with them, you still have no idea what they actually do?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because
I, I
it's
did.
all the word salad that all fits together. And it's funny, at the time of recording this, I've literally just came off of a networking event, and there was one lady and she seemed lovely, and she
Mhm.
gave this amazing presentation and she used all the keywords, and I just said to her from a place of honest curiosity, so like, who would I refer to you? Like, what kind of people are you looking for? Because I just didn't know. Like, say for example, you're a web designer. This person wasn't, but say you're a web designer. How would I distinguish you from all the other web designers I meet at my networking events? Like when people say to me, I truly love Ted Lasso, I'm like, oh my gosh. So if I find someone who's a Ted Lasso fan, I'm like, it's you I need to refer to. Or if someone says, like I said something yesterday, it's like, I don't really care about this stuff, but I'll die on the hill of which is the best song from Hamilton. And it started this whole discussion in the comments. Now, some people might be like, well, what if they don't know Hamilton? But they'll know some other musical or some way to connect. But then you know, oh, yeah, this is the person I need. Whereas if it's just like, you do websites or you do SEO or you do life coaching or you do whatever, that's wonderful. But you're not planting anything that I'm going to remember you.
Yo. Yeah. And I think, we're talking about business, and it's so true in business. It's also like, if we're talking about connecting with people on a larger scale, it's that too, right? Like if you're just showing up being the normal mom, dropping your kid off, then why are you going to stand out? Why does somebody want to go like strike up a conversation with you? Now, if you show up in a big floppy hat and you're like singing Jimmy Buffett, I don't even know if you care about Jimmy Buffett in Australia, but like, then somebody's gonna be like, oh, some people are gonna be like, well, that's that weirdo, I'm gonna steer clear of her. And some people will be like, oh, let's go sing our favorite song and start singing along with you. And you're like, well, that's my people. Like, that's my people. That's
Yes.
cool. And the people who think you're weirdo, great. At least they won't forget you. You weren't
Have
just
you
like,
ever seen that clip of the dude dancing in a field? Have you? It's
yeah.
it's like a YouTube clip, and he literally just starts dancing by himself on the side of a grassy hill, and you can see the people around looking at him like, what is this guy doing? What is this guy doing? And I'm sure if you Googled it, anyone you could find it. But it's so funny. The first person joins him, and then there's this influx. The next thing, there's a whole bunch of people. And yes, it could have been staged or what have you. But it's always fascinating how in the beginning, when someone does something a little bit unhinged or off the wall or not the norm, there'll be that kind of and there may be, as is in like, yeah, it's not a fit, I'm going to steer clear of them, but as you said, at least you remember them. Or it might be like, oh my gosh, I want to do this too. And it's so funny how we always get stuck in cultural societal norms or ways of doing things. I was chatting to a friend yesterday who has gone sober, and she's like, I just can't go out anymore because I don't drink. And I was like, I've never drunk in my entire life. I'm 40 years old. I've never been drunk. I just personally never liked alcohol. I still have a damn good time. Some people will ask, and they'll ask the most fascinating questions, like, what does your husband think? And I'm like, he's happy to always have a sober driver. But, there's standards and conditions and roles that we've cast ourselves in or other people have cast us in that we don't have to stick in.
Yeah. Do you want to do a quick doodle with me?
Yes, always. And anyone at
Okay.
home, do you want them to do it too? If they
Oh,
want to?
yeah,
If
please
they want to, if
do.
it's safe to do so,
Please. If you feel comfortable doing it, you're not driving.
or on a train. But if you're on a train, you might have pen and paper handy. I don't know.
Yeah, I used to love doing stuff like this when I was on a train, actually. I mean, it makes you not feel so precious about the work because it moves around and
Oh
things
yeah, if you
happen.
go, you just blame it going over a bump. Like, okay, so
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
unofficially I'm on a train. You look at
Okay.
this, you'd be like, we hit a bump.
Exactly. That's what happens in all our drawings, right?
Oh, I literally just dropped my book onto the floor. So much definitely on a train.
You definitely are. Somebody just elbowed that right out of you.
Okay.
So we are going to do a quick doodle. So people who are listening, and if you feel a little weird about doodling, this is not doodle for me is not about it looking good. Okay. We're not trying to create the next painting that I
I
put
was
on
going to
my
say, we're not
wall.
doing the coyote behind. Like,
We're not doing the
no.
coyote behind. We're not doing anything like that. Doodle is just a form of expression. It's a visual expression, just like you sing, even though you can't sing, or dance, even though you can't,
But that's so
officially dance.
funny. I sing and dance, even though I can't sing or dance, and I have no shame about it. But when it comes to drawing, I have so much hang-ups.
I know, we really do. Yeah, we could talk about that, man. It's so true. But like anything else, we can get out of it, right? Like we can practice. So this is a chance to practice that, y'all. Get another tool for your toolkit with a doodle. So what I'm going to invite you to do, just for like a minute, and this is a great way to get out of your head too, is just put a minute timer on something. Don't overthink it. I want you to draw something that represents something that's weird about you, something that's totally weird about you. Just draw it real fast. Whatever comes out, give it a doodle. It doesn't have to look like what's in your head. Just be inspired by that.
These markers are scented. It's like, whew.
Oh,
This is going to
yeah.
be an interesting experience. I'm actually done in like 5 seconds, so it's curious, but each to their
Yay!
own.
Okay. Okay. So I can be done too. I don't have to get any more elaborate than that. All right. So what did you come up with?
You want me to reveal?
If you don't mind.
And I had no idea in mind, but what came to mind as I was drawing it is kind of like a puzzle piece that doesn't fit in the puzzle. Do you know how,
Ooh.
like, when you have a puzzle and then you've got to find that, it's like, this is not going to fit.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I could say so many things about this right now too, because like I bet your ideal clients like have a piece that fits perfectly in that bottom, or a piece that fits perfectly in the top. Like they don't fit your whole puzzle, but they have a piece that fits perfectly within a part of you, or just thinking
Yes.
about your friends, right? Like, I don't know about you, but there are friends that I go to for these things, and friends that I go to for these things, and friends that are like this, and friends that are like that. And that they surround my weird puzzle piece.
Yeah, but this I kind of love it because people often ask, what it is that I do,
Mhm.
and it's like, what do I do today? Like, I'm a
Yes.
podcaster, I'm a coach, I host networkings, I do weird spiritual, intuitive, I don't even know what to call it, things. And sometimes when people can't fit in the hole, they will
Mhm.
immediately exit stage left. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't sign up for this, and get all whatever about it. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, I don't do one thing. Like, people often say to
Right.
me, I should have a different YouTube channel for each of my whatevers. I'm like, no, I just trust that if you don't like this episode, you can hit stop. If you don't like that email, you can just move on. But some people
Mhm.
get so like, you need to fit in the box that I've cast you in, or you don't belong. And I really got to the point, like, and even look at this now, there's some sort of like glitchy bit here in the past. But oh my gosh, I'd have to erase that or whatever. I'm like, yeah, no, there's glitchy bits in my life. Like,
I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is like mine's kind of like this. So like we picked a similar color. Look at that.
yes.
Um,
When you turn it sideways the way you just had it, see on the far near the spiral side, that to
mhm.
me looks like a person in the head and then
It
the arm coming
does.
down, and then the heart is like a diamond shape. Like,
Oh
so it's
my
kind of like
gosh.
I'm
How fun
I'm
is
connected
that?
with the group, but I'm also an individual being. That's what comes to mind for me.
Love it. Yeah, it's so interesting also when you just turn your drawing and look through a screen, and suddenly you get away from what you drew a little bit, like because we get in our heads about what we drew, and hearing you talk about it, but I'm also really noticing, oh, it looks so different to me there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
And the
thinking that,
orientation, if you turn it vertical
yeah,
versus horizontal
yeah.
or
It's
upside
a
down, it looks totally
huge
different.
practice when
You
you're
know
an
what kind of
artist and doing
reminds me
your
of this
painting.
reminds me of, Karen?
Huh.
When you lie on the ground and look at clouds, and you look for
Yeah.
shapes in the clouds and you make a story. Like, my kids and I do that often. And last week, Casimir saw a dragon, and it was the same cloud, and Xanthi saw like a knight, but it was how, the angle, or yeah.
And that's what is so, to me, meaningful about doodling. Like we're not, that's why I say it's not about what it looks like. It's the meaning we find within it. It's also the process of doing it is very good for us, but the meaning that we can find within it, we can make our own meaning here. And you could say, oh, I see a person and what you say might resonate for me and be really great, or it might be what you needed to see in my drawing.
Yes. And
That's
I think
something that
that's the
really
thing
helps you.
too. If
Yeah.
it doesn't resonate
Mhm.
with the person who drew it, like, you can take it and go, oh, I see that too. Or you could be like, yeah, that doesn't resonate. once again, back to the puzzle thing, you might be like, I see something else entirely. And I think the more we do that in the world and have that ability to share what we see and what we're making it mean, not as a judgment or as a now this is this forevermore. Because it's funny, I think I've shared this with you before. I don't know, but anyway, I share it again. My husband did like English literature in either first year uni or last year of school. He had to do some extra subject. My husband is an electrical engineer. He has a science STEM brain through and through. And anyway, he had to do an English unit. So he picked this and he had to do a research on some writer. And anyway, you had to read the piece and then make your interpretation or whatever. And so instead of doing it that way, my husband actually researched with his science brain. And so his paper he handed in was like, yeah, why did the person write this piece? And then he was like, well, because he was broke and he needed some money. So he was after commission, which was the actual truth of the matter. And it was like, the teacher's like, no, but you're missing the point. He's like, but you asked why he wrote the piece. I found why he wrote the piece. And I think
Uh-huh.
sometimes, it's kind of like, your interpretation and what you make it mean can be for you, which is what I think you're saying, rather than like what's the truth with a capital T.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's what this process helps so much if you're willing to be open to other interpretations. If you, and notice when you're not, right? Like notice when you have a strong attachment to something needing to be one way, to be curious there. But, I really wanted people to capture this like weird part of themselves. And if you feel like you just scribbled, then get curious about how it might represent the weird part of yourself, which I'm kind of interested in mine because I was just like, well, let's just draw something.
Can I ask a question
But
about yours? Why a second
yeah.
color? Because when we've done these things in the past, from my observation, you normally stick to one color. So why did the second color come in?
So the second color came in because one of the things that I think I tried to avoid, but is true about me, is that I can be a complete mess and I really like getting messy. And so I like had this thing and I was like, oh, make it a mess because like, you know,
I
I really
love
like to show my
that.
mess a lot more. And so when I feel like I show my mess, I feel like I'm being authentic. Like I feel like, oh, I'm being messy.
Yes.
Like there's like I really like, just being in the paint and like or being in the process of creating anything is mess in its own way. So that's something that I think we often think is weird about us and try to hide our messes instead of showing them.
I like the
And
mess. I just don't like the cleanup.
I told my partner early on when we first met, I'm like, I'm really good at making messes. I'm pretty good at cleaning up, but it's less fun. Like,
Well, it's funny
like
you should say that. So my husband, when we were first together, he didn't cook much. He was capable, he just didn't. But over the years, we've evolved now. We've been together the 20 years. But basically, he cooks and I do the dishes. Now the kids are getting older, they're taking that over. So like, it's sweet. But because he's like, how do you use this thing? He's like, you cook and it looks like an army has descended with the battalions in our kitchen. He's like, can you just like not or rinse as you go? And I'm like, yeah, no, I have to use everything.
yeah, I'm in the process, right? This is why I like to paint in basements and garages because when we moved into this place, my partner's like, why am I getting the nice room? Don't you want the nice room? I'm like, no, I don't want the nice room. Like I need to make a mess. Like I
My
need to make a
kitchen table
mess.
is currently recovering from an art project the kids and I did a few weeks ago because I forgot to put down the stuff and now it's painted, but it's old and it
Yeah.
kind of makes it look more lived in. So I don't mind so much, but yeah.
There you go. There you go. Our messes make us much more human, don't they? Like they make you something, and those are our connection points. That's what's really going on, Like I remember when I went to that networking event and I held up the piece, the illustration. I was just kind of like, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I really like to draw things. I illustrate stuff. I help people. Like I'm a life coach. Like and like the just me saying like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. Not only were they connecting with my work, but also they were like, well, cool, let us help you. Tell us what you need. Like, and how many connections are born from that? Like, I don't know what to do when somebody's saying, yay, I would like to help you. And it just kind of builds from there sometimes, we all want to help. I think we have a natural desire to help each other out. So
Yeah, and
if you,
sometimes we don't know how to ask. And I think you being you and in your way, doing the doodling or whatever, is that connection piece or that translation. And obviously, I think the biggest fear, at least for me, and I'm sure for many people, is like, what if people don't get it? And of course, there will be people who don't get it, but they're not your people. It's
No.
like, not everyone's going to like you, but do you like everybody? I know I sure don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no way. No way. It actually, a coach that I have today just said something that I love. I don't think it was hers originally, but it was just, be willing to let people be wrong about you. Like, they don't have to like you. They don't have to agree with what you're doing. Doesn't mean you don't do it. It doesn't mean you don't show up in the way that you want to show up, and say what you need to say, because the people who are your people, they get it. You
They
don't have to
get it.
explain so
Yeah.
much.
Your people will love you. And then the other
Yeah.
people, because I think that's the thing too. If you stand out,
Yeah.
that there is that ripple. There's the people who are like, oh my gosh, I'm repelled, like a magnet. I'm repelled. Ooh. And
Yeah.
then there's people who are attracted, like, yes. But if you're the vanilla we were talking about at the beginning, I actually took notes, but I've lost them amongst all the doodling. If you're pretending to be someone else, if you're so focused on your pitch that you're not actually connecting and listening, then you don't stand out, but also nobody really remembers you. Like, people will be like, oh yeah, I met this person. Yeah, she was nice, but they don't have anything. It's like, oh, I remember the chick who doodled or who sang or who danced or who whatever. Like, that stays in my mind, whereas the vanilla kind of just like everybody else is not memorable.
Yeah, and it's a practice to stay with it, right? Like, I've been doing this doodle thing, and I have a very loud voice that says nobody's going to take you seriously, Karen. Like, you're trying to get into companies and organizations, they're not going to see you. They're not going to take you seriously. Like, I have a huge background in executive function coaching, and it was a massive act of bravery on my part to bring this into my executive function world, because people have this expectation about executive function, and of course, I think this is greatly enriching it, but the voices are loud. And so it's a practice of being willing to keep showing up, to see your little genius, and then your little weirdo is probably your genius, and then show up with it. And, the doodle that I did for you, for your business.
Yes. Do you want me to show that now? Or do you want
Yeah,
to talk
that'd
about
be
it first?
awesome. No, you could show it. That's fine. The point I want to say related to what we're saying is, that was so easy for me to do for you. And it was so easy for me to do for you because I felt like I knew what you were about. I felt like you showed yourself, and there was something unique there that I could capture that stood out from the noise of everything else.
So for
And
anyone
so,
who's just listening and not watching on YouTube, I'm going to describe this, but I would encourage you to come watch it on YouTube so you can see the picture, and I'll see if I remember to take a selfie of us later so I can make this the cover. So if you've listened to it, you don't have to watch through to find the section. So basically, there is a woman, lady, girl, person with her arms above her head, and then over the top of her is a heart made of like a heart-shaped broken line. So to me, and when Karen and I were discussing this, because I work with people on setting boundaries, so the boundary isn't just about keeping other people out. Like, people think boundaries are bad, like, oh, but that's a barricade. It's also about keeping parts of yourself in. And then when you look at the image, she's got a big heart in her chest. And then off to the side, I like nesting dolls, or babushka comes to mind. The layers, and each of them that shed away from the center are like more gray, more dull, more colorless. Like, she's colorful. And to me, it's just like shedding all the parts. And it's what we're talking about here, where you're trying to be someone else. Like, these outer layers, they don't really stand out. They're kind of dull. And you kind of might notice them. But like, imagine if you were walking down the street, to me, the bright, colorful person who's like lit up, energetically glowing, it's like, oh, she catches my eye. Whereas the other ones, you just kind of your eyes would slide off of them. And I think that maybe I hadn't ever thought about this way before, but that is the fear in being yourself. Because if somebody rejects one of these other ones, well, that's not really me anyway. So it kind of doesn't hurt so much. If I go to a networking and I'm professional and I put on my suit and I speak in all the language and I don't swear and I whatever, and it's like, oh, I don't like that chick. It doesn't hurt as much because it's like, well, that's not really me anyway. But if I go in my sweary fairy self, like, it's funny, to this day, you're talking about, being nervous or being anxious. when people ask what I do, and I'm truly honest, I'm like, I help people say no without feeling like a bitch.
Mhm.
I know there's going to be people who are like, oh, she swore, but there's
Yeah.
always the ones who are like, oh, and you could see the little fist pump and they're like, I like her because,
Mhm.
yeah, I get it. And it's not about the swearing or whatever. It's about, being you. And part of me is I speak in a fruity way, and not all the time. It's funny. A lot of people go, you say how much you swear, but you don't that much. It's like, not every second sentence or whatever, but I don't hold back. I'm unapologetic. And I think that's what comes through what you've done here.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is really reminding me of something that happened to me the other day. And I'm having one of those moments of going, you're going to be weird, Karen, for talking about this. So I'm going to
Let's
lean
have
into
it.
it for
I'm
this
here for it.
conversation.
Love weird.
So I was having a bit of a fit of anxiety a few days ago. And I I don't know about you, but this time in my life, during my mid 40s, I keep waking up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I get these lovely sweats. I'm
This
having
was
all
me
kinds.
last night. I have been awake from midnight until like 2, and then I got like 2 hours sleep. So I'm like, what on earth? This is not
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's a crazy time of life, these shifts and hormonal changes that are happening. And so I keep regularly waking up at this time. And I find that that's the time where if there's anxiety or anything I'm anxious about, it's like comes right in. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to really practice accepting my anxiety right now, just accepting it. And I had this vision, and it really is interesting how close it is to the doodle that I did for you. That's what's reminding me of it, but also this conversation. And the image, the vision that came into my head was I was sort of like my being was this light, and there were these two figures sort of hovering, dark, tall figures, like hovering over it. And I would name one anxiety, and one was feeling like a shame kind of feeling.
Mm.
And um, and I took a closer look, and it wasn't that they were like hovering down on me. It was that they were turned around and trying to protect me. So I had felt that they were hovering and being menacing, and they were trying to protect. And so as I practiced being like, thank you for your protection, I appreciate your protection. I don't need that right now. You can kind of relax, and just like having gratitude and gratefulness that had been there, that had taken care of me when it needed to. And as it dissolved, my light grew bigger, right? And I think that's what happens is we see our weird parts and we get anxious about it, and we feel shame for the weirdness, and we're so afraid that people won't accept us that we hide our own light. Like that protection just brings it in instead of letting it shine out. And then we kind of get that self-fulfilling prophecy going. We're
Oh,
not really shining
yeah.
out, so we're not really connecting, so people don't get what we do, so we think we're messed up, we don't have it right, maybe we should change what we do, oh, we need to say it differently, oh, I didn't wear the right suit, and it takes us down
Well, that's
these
actually called
paths.
like the wheel of self-sabotage. So I learned the
Mhm.
concept from one of my coaches, Joanna Lindenbaum. But say, for example, if we're going all over the place, I love that I can do this. It's my show. I can do what I want. Say, for example, you are single and you're wanting to find your partner. And I use this because I've been with my husband for over 20 years. So it's something, completely unrelated. So you're like, oh, I kind of feel weird about going on the apps. Like the apps are full of people who are only after one thing, all the stuff that goes through your mind. So you don't put yourself out there. When you don't put yourself out there in whatever way, I'm not saying you have to do the apps, but if you don't put yourself out there, you don't meet someone. It's not like you're waiting at home. Because even with Cinderella, the prince came to her house to try the
Mhm.
shoe, but she'd been at the ball. If you're never going to the ball, how are you going to find someone? So then what happens is, you have this thought like nobody wants to be with me, and then it's reinforced because you're not meeting anyone. So then say a friend says, oh, I've got this person, I'm going to set you up with a blind date. But in your mind, your thought is nobody wants to be with me. I'm all this sort of stuff. So you act like a total weirdo because you're like, oh, and then it reinforces more evidence. Like no one wants to be with you. Of course they don't want to be with you. I was so weird. I wouldn't want to be with me. And then the next time someone says, hey, do you want to go on no, I don't do blind dates. And you just isolating yourself further and further and further in this sabotage of proving the thought that you're never going to be in a loving relationship, or the thing that you're actually after. And I love with your example from your dream or from your night sweats or whatever, but the anxiety and stuff, we can see it from our point of view as like, it's over us. But if you can see it from a
Mhm.
different angle, like you turn the image around like you did earlier, actually, this is trying to protect me. I don't want you to look like a weirdo. I don't want people to throw barbs at you or be horrible. And to this end too, another tangent, I send emails. Many of you are on my list. If you're not, shameless plug, suzannekolberg.com/newsletter. My emails are off the wall, much like me. Sometimes people don't like what I write, and sometimes they write really nasty stuff back. Not always. Like some people just simply unsubscribe, and I wish everybody did that. But there was one once that I got back that was horrible, truly, truly horrible. And I remember sharing it with a friend. For anyone listening, I don't share the person's name if I share something like this, just the contents. I sent her a screenshot of the text, not the name, not the email, anything like that. Because I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I feel really hurt. Like it hurts. She got Garage Band and sang it and turned it into a ditty. Now, whenever I feel anxious, because sometimes I do, I feel anxious, even though I send so many emails to this day. Sometimes I'm like, oh, people aren't going to like this. It's a bit back to my puzzle piece doodle. It's a bit like over here, they've signed up on this part of my email, and now I'm sending one over here. I just play that and I laugh, and then I hit send anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people, if anything, your people are going to be attracted to your bravery, right? Like attracted to your authenticity. I hate saying that word because I feel like it's so overused, but like attracted to you just being you, so you know? And I don't know, the people I look up to the most are those kinds of people. And they're multifaceted. They're not one thing. They don't fit in a box easily, you know? So I've admired this artist writer Sark since I was in high school.
Yes, like the
I
juicy pages, or
I love her.
yes.
Yes, I adore her. Inspiration Sandwich came my way from a friend in high school, and I've been a fan ever since. And I remember in more recent years, because when you first met her, you knew her through her books and stuff, and I loved it, and they're playful, but they were also like, we're talking about real stuff here. Like I remember in college, her writing about her cellulite, and I was just like, whoa, like how brave was that to write about your cellulite? Like we talk about it more these days, but I'm talking about the late 90s here, folks. Like you didn't talk about cellulite in the 90s, And and then like more recently she's had some YouTube videos now, and she'll talk and she'll do things. And I'm like, she goes into the depths and the dark parts too, even though her writing and her word is so colorful and beautiful. And you think she's just this playful person all the time. And I love that. Like, I love that. I love multifaceted, brave people, who want to talk about something and do.
Someone said to me once, it stayed with me. It was actually somebody I met at a networking event. It was like, you do deep work in a lighthearted way. And
Yeah.
that's always stood out. Because
Yes.
I think that's why, depending on, where a person is when they're receiving it, like this person who wrote me this really horrible email, I appreciate that maybe they had something going on that day, and what I said triggered, activated, whatever it is. And, they didn't see it in the lighthearted way that it was intended. But also, being the boundaries bitch that I am, I'm not standing for that. If you're like, I do swear, but if you swear at me, like I don't swear at people, I just swear as in like, oh,
Yeah.
then you will be exited from my list and, bless and block, because
Mm-mm.
I don't have to be on the receiving end of that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Absolutely not. No.
So all of
No, I love
this,
that.
we're going in many directions, and we could literally talk for hours. Like I want to do another episode in the future, like bookmark this, about how some people have, like, because I just want to talk about it for me, but other people might get benefit. I'd never made the connection until today that I don't give two shits about singing, even though I can't carry a tune in a bucket. I don't give two shits about dancing. Like my kids yesterday, like, what move is that? Can you not do it at the school gate? I don't care. But when it comes to drawing, I have some serious hang-ups. And I just find that so fascinating, because why in those other two things? Maybe it's because the drawing stays. Like once I finish singing, you can be like, oh, thank goodness. But this is still on my paper. I don't know. I want to unpack this in future. But all of this to
I would
say,
love to
because
unpack that. Yeah.
we could keep talking, let the listeners know about this as an offer. So if you're listening again and not watching, I'm holding up the doodle that Karen did for me, the personalized one. How does this work if people are like, oh my God, I want one of those for me?
Yeah. So if you want one of those for you, I am just pulling up so I make sure and give you the right web address. Well, you can go to studiolightillustration.com, And one of the options on the menu right there is business doodle illustration. And there's a little form that you can fill out to kind of let me know some information. But basically, I love to create these because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I want to know about your business. I'm going to do my research, but it's also like, you're going to get something that it's different than a logo, folks. Okay. I want to differentiate that for a second. It's different than a logo. Because I'm going to feel into, I'm going to be my weirdo here. Okay. I'm going to be my
I'm here for it.
weirdo.
I'm weird
I'm going
like
to be
this
my
too.
weirdo. I'm going to feel into your business. I'm going to feel into what you're saying. I'm going to feel into what you're not saying. And I'm going to create some images for you based off of that really capture the heart of what I see happening based off of what you're sharing with me in my research. And so it is a bit of it's different than a logo, right? Like, I'm not tweaking this to get what you want. This is an image that shows you something that maybe you haven't even seen about your business before, or shows it in a new way. So it's a bit of an experience for you, but people tend to really like them and find them helpful. Like, one way that people find them really helpful is that it creates like new ways to talk about their work. They create new blog posts from it, or new content from them. I know for me, whenever somebody says something interesting about my work that I haven't thought about before, it's like, oh, I want to write about that. I want to talk about that. I want to weave it in if it strikes me as true. But they also create cards for their, like greeting cards or thank you cards for their businesses, products for their businesses. They put them on their websites, etc. But yes, and you will get the original and a digital version. You get both.
I love that. And I really just want to reiterate, as Karen said, this isn't a logo. This isn't you're hiring Karen and there's a back and forth. What do you call it where they do tweaks or whatever? Like, what's the word for that? You're
Like
allowed
revisions.
revisions. Yeah. This is
Yeah.
not that.
No, yes. Yeah, no, this is like, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to doodle. I'm going to give you some choices. Like, I'll do some loose sketches, so you have some choices and direction that you like, but then I'm going to create it. So you get a work of art. It's a work of art.
It is.
And
And the other thing I want to say too is not Karen, there was somebody else. So years ago, my late mum, it's so funny. In my family, anything psychic, anything woo was very downplayed. I grew up in quite a religious family, but my mum had a bent for the woo stuff, same as me. So unbeknownst to everyone else in the family, we went to a psychic fair when I was a teenager, and I was like, hush, hush. Anyway, there was this lady, and she was doing, I'm not going to say similar, I don't want to compare, but she was doing something where you kind of had a little chat with her for like 5 minutes, and then she drew, I don't know if it was your aura or your essence or whatever, but I imagine, like you were saying, you do the research, you look at their website. Anyway, on the wall, she had the most magnificent examples, and I know you have examples on your website. So I looked at them all and I was like, oh, wow, I can't wait to get mine done. And what she drew for me, to be honest, and I wish I kept it. I'm sure it's going to be tucked in a book somewhere because I wouldn't have thrown it away, but I've moved house, I don't know how many times since then. But anyway, it was not like them. They were like vines and flowers and whatever. And mine was it almost reminded me of a star, like very straight and edges. And she's like, you are very direct, you are very blunt, you get to the point, you whatever. And like 17-year-old me was crushed because I wanted what everyone else had. And now that's another reason I wish I could find it now, because it's like, oh my gosh, that lady saw me in a whole way, or felt into the energy that I was not yet ready to embody. Because yeah, I'm not like anyone else. I am direct, I'm blunt, I'm straight to the point, and now I love that about me, but I wasn't ready to see it yet. So what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is, if you don't necessarily love what is made initially, it does, maybe it's just you're not ready for it yet.
it can be, right? It can I always tell, I love tarot cards. And I teach, it's one of the many things I do. I teach other people how to read them intuitively. I don't worry so much about the books. I want them to use their intuition and feel into them and read into them. And I always share with them, like, when you get those cards that look like, oh, this looks awful, I don't want this card. That card just might be your best friend. Like, that card is getting your attention in a way that a beautiful card might never do it. Like, that card is there for you to show you something, to help you or guide you in some way, make you see something. And so, yeah, to your point, like, we don't know why we have resistance at first to things. And then when we kind of get
Yeah,
into
we
it,
don't
yeah,
know. And that's the other
we
thing, just
don't
before we
know.
wrap up. So I'll mention, so
Yeah.
Karen does these, highly recommended, absolutely gorgeous, different packages. I'll link
And you
it
could
if you
do for
can't
your
find it.
business, or you could just do it for you too. Like
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
definitely. I want to get a me one done sometime soon.
Yes. Yeah.
Pencil it in. But the other thing I want to say is my off the wall, outside the lines kind of business thing that I do is I do these like I know things readings. Now, originally they were personalized. So, and they're still available. So if you go to my website, suzannecolbeck.com, hit the everything page because I like to, it's just all listed there. You can get a personalized one. At the time of recording this, it's 99 Australian dollars. I don't know because podcasts have a long shelf life. But then I started doing a group one because what I found is sometimes there'd be common cards or common themes or common messages that came through. So it's only $10 at the time of recording this a week. I do it on Mondays. So you book it anytime during the week, and on the following Monday, Australian time, it will come through. And the reason this is coming to mind is in the last week, one of the ladies is like, none of this resonated with me, like none of it. And that's the thing with a group thing as opposed to a personalized one, like maybe the bits and points of it. But then for whatever reason, she bought the next one, like trust, whatever. And she's like, this one's for me. Like this felt like the entire thing. But sometimes too, if it's in your shadow, if you're not ready to see it yet, then it could be that it is for you, but it's so much more easy sometimes to connect with some messages than with others. And the same when you said with tarot with the cards, sometimes I draw a card. My thing for myself is I don't allow myself to draw another one because what I used to do is like, well, I don't like that one.
I
And
don't
then
like
I'd
that one,
shuffle it
right?
back in and then it would come out again. So then if
Yep.
I really didn't like it, I put it to the side. It's like, you're not coming back out, baby. And it's kind of like, you don't get to like, to choose, like keep spinning the wheel to find, because that's like basically being the very definition of an ask hole where you ask for help and then you just don't want the answer. So it's kind of like
I've not heard
being
that term
open to
before.
see
That's
what
great.
comes through, and
Yeah.
even if you don't want to hear it, or sometimes later the message drops in, like something will come through and I'm like, I don't really resonate with that, and then a couple of weeks later or years as a point to my very jointed picture, when you're
Yeah.
ready you hear your message.
And that's why, at the very beginning, you mentioned the paintings. That's why sometimes they take forever to finish. Like, I'm not ready for the message yet. I know it's there. I know there's something for me, but I have to make other art because I could never make enough to sell if I waited on the creatures to tell me or for me to be ready. Like, sometimes I'm not
Of
ready to hear it.
course,
So the bigger
that hadn't ever
pieces,
got to me, as
yeah.
in like, yeah, you're not ready yet.
No, it sometimes art will sit there for a year and I'll just be like, oh my gosh, what is it like about this piece? And then something in my life happens and suddenly I look at it, I'm like, I know what I have to do to finish that now. But I cannot predict and I don't want to. Like paintings are a part of my personal, profound spiritual journey. So that's, there are paintings that I make that don't have to follow that, but there are paintings like that that I will always make. And they will take their own time because I will hear the message when I'm ready
It's
and
funny you
it
should say
won't be
that.
able
I
to
don't
finish it.
paint, like I don't create art, but I do write. And I
Mhm.
have so many half-finished pieces written out or typed out or scribbled in whatever.
Sure.
And then it's not the time yet. And then other
No.
times it'll be like Kermit at the keyboard.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
really,
So
yeah,
Karen,
we're
we
ready
could
when we're
literally
ready.
talk forever, and I'm sure we'll talk again because it's like every
Yeah.
time I talk to you, it's like, I don't know, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about this. But let the listeners know the best place to find you, how they can follow more of your work. Do you still do the drop-in doodle type things, or?
So the best places to find me, I'm not, I'm I'm not going to put myself in a box. I'm going to give you 3 different websites.
Yes, please
So
do all the
I
things.
I am a multi-passionate creative and I will stand by it. So if you are interested in I call myself a creative productivity coach where I activate creativity for practical solutions so you can make an bigger impact with your work. And that's at howdoodle.com. Classes, courses, workshops, doodle shop, which is I'm sorry, Doodlecast, which is my version of a podcast, etc. It's all on there. And then and circles too for your creative goals. And then if you want to know more about my illustration work, whether it's business doodles, books, that kind of stuff, it's studiolight illustration.com. And then if you like paintings like this one behind me, that's more spiritual, or you like tarot or Reiki, then I'm going to invite you to check out soulspiderstudio.com, which has all of that jazz on it.
I haven't
So
checked that one out yet. Please email me all those so I can pop them in the show
I
notes.
will. I
Awesome.
will.
Thank you so much for
Yes.
joining me. This has been very valuable. Thank you everyone for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for
Thank
now.
you.